Hi there, and welcome back to Culturally Sound. I am here with Corey White, CEO of Cyvatar. Exciting conversation ahead. He's had 30 years in tech, started Cyvatar back in 2019, and I am really interested to learn about your journey, where it started, where you're at, and where you're going. Corey, tell us a little bit about yourself.
And thank you, Chandler. It's a pleasure to be on here. First and foremost, I'm just noticing right behind you, it says, stay humble, work hard, and be kind. Yes, those are things after 30 years. If you haven't learned those things, yeah, I don't know what you've been doing, but I'll tell you, those are kind of good staples to kind of use as a foundation here because for me, being a founder and also even being an executive at large global companies. It's humbling.
Mm,
It absolutely is humbling.
mhm.
Right when you think you're riding high, you'll get smacked down, and it is those are lessons learned, and then the beautiful thing about that, and I think everybody should go through it, is that you got to have the mindset to know you're gonna rise back up. Okay? Like, I've been through so much in my career, even professionally and personally. But I always had the mindset, okay, I know I'm getting up from this. It hurts right now, but I'm getting up. And then the newer version of me, it's kind of like a phoenix rising. The newer
Mhm.
version is better
Mhm.
every single time. And so you have to embrace that this is a journey. You're not here on this earth to have some easy ride and everything magically come to you. You not have to work hard. It's a journey. You got to go through it. And that goes to the next one, work hard. And then lastly, be kind. I love that because there are not enough people looking out for other people, in my opinion.
Today?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I mean, people in power that, they should be looking out for others. Now, no, there's a balance to it, that I want to make sure, there's a caveat. I've had many people, take advantage of my kindness over the
Mm.
years. But it doesn't mean I change. Doesn't mean I stopped being kind. It just, you may look twice sometimes before you do something. Yeah, but you still do it. And I gave an analogy to a friend of mine. It was like, there are people that, they jumped in the car one time they were driving and they had a car accident. They're like, I'm never driving again. No, that's not how it works. You still got to keep getting out there and being kind. Yes, you may get taken advantage of here and there, but the vast majority of people have been thankful. And that for me personally, when I know I've touched someone, I've helped their lives to get better, that motivates me more than anything else.
I love that. I love that. And it's that resilience and that willingness to have that fill your cup. What brought that into your life? What brought that perspective to be an awareness in you initially? Like where did that start? Because that's not something that's just naturally innate in people. There that's either a lesson learned or something that's been developed in you as a person. Did that come from your parents or from close relationships, or what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I definitely say it was the whole journey, but I
Mm,
love the fact you point out, what's innate. And
hmm.
I truly believe that everyone is born good because you don't know what good or bad is. And
Yeah.
and I love the fact when you think about, when does something start being good and then start
Mm,
being bad? There's no actual defining line,
mm,
right? To figure out what is what. And so when you think about where did it come from for me? I'm a watcher of people, and I want to understand what motivates the people around me or people in general. And one of the things I absolutely have noticed is that, there's a great book called Give or Take.
mhm.
And most people are not conscious givers. You ask them, are you a giver or are you a taker? Most people are like, well, I think I'm a good person. I give, I help, whatever. But if you're
Mhm.
not consciously, intentionally giving,
Mhm.
guess what? You're a taker. Okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so you have to be conscious of that. And for me, when I think about my journey, when I was starting out in my career in the mid 90s in 1995, you know, I didn't feel like there were enough mentors out
Mm,
there, enough people
mhm,
willing to help. And maybe,
mhm.
their podcasts or Zooms, there's a lot more to facilitate it. It's a lot harder to do it without technology. But I'm a mentor for like four different, startup accelerators.
Good for you.
Yeah, some of them are diverse accelerators. This afternoon, my a sales guy, a good friend of mine, his name's Chuck Matthews. His grandson is starting a company, and the first thing he thought about is I got to connect him with Corey White. And
Oh,
so,
wow.
yeah, he and I are talking about his business, and so I intentionally carve out my time. At least once a week, I am mentoring someone, giving them insight and advice. What I had to realize, Chandler, was at first I was like, well, I'm not some billionaire yet,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But I'm not, and so when people say, Corey, can you please be a mentor for our accelerator, come talk to our startups and come talk to our entrepreneurs? I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm not there yet, right?
Yeah.
But what I realized though, my journey, my journey has been um it's been a journey, right? I'll say this, and my mom used to talk about Psalm 23, right?
Mm,
And I never forget this Baptist pastor. He did a whole sermon on it, and
mhm.
he talked for probably like 10 minutes. If you ever been to heard a Baptist church, minister, they could go on and on and on. But he talked for like 10 minutes about how notice that he went through the valley of the shadow of death.
Mhm,
He didn't stay in it.
mhm, mhm,
And so when people go through things in life and in business, you're going through it,
mhm.
but there is always another side of it, right? You're never going to stay there, okay? You're going to go through it. And so there's so many things that I have gone through that, and when I talk, people hear like, wow, I want to hear that wisdom. I don't want to make those same mistakes. And some of them weren't even mistakes. They were just things that they just happen or whatever.
Mhm.
But they're lessons learned. And now I have that knowledge and I share that with any and everybody I can.
Corey, you covered a ton of ground there, and I just want to pull on a couple of things. One, for a close friend to ask you to come and mentor his grandson says volumes about you as a person, because nobody trusts the business advice of their grandchildren to just anybody. So I mean, put that as a feather in your cap. Good for you. And the willingness and the humility to have an understanding of, I'm not there yet. Well, that may be so, but you're many, many, many steps down that path than the person that you're talking to. And even if you're just a step ahead, there is a tremendous amount of value to save and ensure that that person takes that next right step. So I think there's a lot of wisdom in that as well.
Mhm.
What allowed you to have the confidence to put yourself in a position to lead up Savitar and determine that you are the person that takes up this cause and this mission and takes that forward?
Yeah, yeah, great question. I think one of the major fallacies in people's kind of mentality when they're thinking about doing something or starting a business
Mm,
is having a plan B. And like, well, if this doesn't work, I can go back and do this.
right, right.
Well, for me, when I launched this company, I really had to think long and hard. I had taken some time off back in 2019 and traveled to Europe with my family. I just had a lot of time to think. And what I
Mhm,
realized was this, even in my previous company, in my previous two companies, I run my own P&Ls, my own divisions, my own teams, and I've always have been an intrapreneur. Like
mm,
I'm simply not much of a follower.
mhm,
I've always blazed my own path. And so whenever I made career moves, I'd always think to myself, okay, I'm challenging the thought process of people that I'm working with. And I could be right or I could be wrong, but it's a crime if I don't go figure that out. And so I did not have a plan B to go back and work for someone else or do something else. Like it's I've always had the autonomy. I couldn't imagine life, without it.
Hmm.
And I'll finish with this. It's interesting that I love this question. When I started I was a founding executive in 2012 at a company, and it was a pivotal time in my life. I was about 40 years old. I had 3-month-old twin daughters.
Oof.
Yeah. And I was about to go join a startup.
Mm.
Okay. And so I I was recruiting, bringing people into my team, my organization, and they were like, Corey, what is it like to work there? What will it be like? And I was like, well, it's a few things. Number one, we make the culture here. Okay.
Hmm.
You've worked with me or know me, and you know what kind of culture I build. And at the same time, every single one of us gets to make the culture. But I said, let me tell you this. And I'm a bit of a biohacker, by the way. So
Yeah. No,
don't
let's hear it.
don't get blown away by the numbers. But I'm say 150 years old, and I'm on my rocking chair talking to my great grandchildren, depending on what
Hmm.
it is, right? And they asked me, tell me about your life. What was the big change? What was that turning point?
Hmm. Hmm.
I could have stayed when I was 40 years old at my existing job, and over time, I would have made a ton more money. I will have been financially secure. I will have been fine, but I still would have been, director, maybe senior director level running the West. Okay.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
could have rode that out for another, geez, the person that took my spot, another 10 years.
Hmm.
It'd been just fine. Or I roll the dice and I go to this startup, take a pay cut, okay, and have my pay has been a roller coaster over the years. Um, but I would tell my great grandchild, you take that shot
Hmm.
because you should not ever live life, at least for me or people, entrepreneurs, if you have that mindset, live life and not take your shot. Whether you succeed or fail or it doesn't matter. That's irrelevant. You want to be able to sit in that rocking chair and tell that grandchild, I took my shot at 40 years old. And at the time, that was 12 years ago or so. But at the time, that was roughly half of your life. If your life expectancy was 80, and I've done a bunch of biohacking to get to the 150 age now, but that was half your life. So you had half of your life, you make that decision. What are you gonna do?
Hmm.
Are you gonna ride it out and play it safe? Are you gonna go to that startup and now start another startup? And now everything is uncertain, but I'm creating my own reality. I'm into quantum physics and whatnot, but once you
Hmm.
know you can kind of create your own reality,
Hmm.
you should be knowing it.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, fellow entrepreneur, and completely agree. I think I had an interesting conversation with my last guest around leadership and the importance of being able to lead yourself, regardless of your role in a space, in a team, in an environment. Leaders aren't leaders because they want to be the only one on the team. At least that's not why you should be a leader. Leaders are measured, and this is sort of globally understood. Feel free to argue with me on it. Leaders are understood to be great leaders when they create other leaders and they teach those leaders how to lead themselves and how to perform and how to accelerate and how to do things in a way that is able to be modeled and mentored and developed for the people that will come under their leadership. And I
Mhm.
think there's a drastic misconception or a misunderstanding of what leadership is, and building that into a curriculum that is taught at a younger age so that this understanding is embedded in the personalities of those who go out into the workforce today, I think would be a great service to individuals such as yourself, where you're bringing people into a new environment and they understand how to lead themselves so that you can better lead them down that path and up that hill and create that vision of what you're looking to create. And they're able to do the same in kind with their team. Do you have an opinion on any of that?
Yeah, I absolutely do. What is interesting about being a leader, and especially when you've been an executive with several hundred people in your
Mm,
organization, and but if you start that from scratch and build it all the way up to that many people, and you get to know everybody within your organization, spend holidays like Christmas parties, you see wives and families and birthdays and marriages, all these things happen during that time that you're a leader. I had the opportunity, once my last company, got acquired. It was really interesting. I was I'll tell you from the perspective of employees that talked to me
mhm,
after I left that organization. Many of them came back and said they had no idea how much I was shielding them from, just regular politics that companies have, things that are
yes.
going on. They had no idea of what that looked like.
Mhm,
I wanted my team to be able to just do their job
mm,
and not worry about all the extra that goes on within any company, right? And it happens in any company. And so, we again had our own P&L, we had our own culture and kind of different way about doing things. But once I left, then some of the folks that are still there, they came back and they were like, "Wow, okay, did not know it." But Chandler, I think it's fascinating, right or wrong.
mm,
By the time I did leave, I was actually physically sick.
mm,
The stress of it, the pressure of it, which I try my best to mask it. Some people that were close to me could probably tell it, but I was in horrible shape, from mentally, physically. I mean, it took me about, 3 to 5 months to just get my body back, right. Uh,
mm.
it was a lot of stress. And I think that when people, want to be leaders or want to be in a position of leadership, they don't know all of that. They don't see all of that. They're not exposed to it. And I have a lot of empathy for anybody in a leadership position because I've been there, and it's hard, it's stressful. Like there's no you know right answer for everything. There's always this gray area. You do this, then someone could be affected. You don't do it, someone's affected. There's always some collateral damage to whatever you do. And if you make a bad decision as a leader and your division, your team doesn't thrive, or they don't grow and they lose money or whatever, then you have to lay people off. That's back on you. And so their families, they're dependent on you as that leader making the right decision.
Mhm.
And lastly, I'll just say I've done a lot of research on it. If people looked at Simon Sinek and you look at back before the 80s, layoffs wasn't a thing.
Mhm.
It was loyalty in companies. Now that's gone away.
Mhm.
And I wish there was some balance, some happy medium there, because now the employee loyalty is not there either. So no one's loyalty either, and it makes the whole equation a lot more complicated.
And how short-sighted was that position from Friedman to say, the what we need to understand is that the priority needs to be set at the feet of the shareholders. When the reality of up until this point, all of the wealth, all of the ability to scale and grow a company lays at the feet of the people that are on the ground interacting with the people that buy the product that they're looking to sell or the service they're looking to provide. And I found that very interesting to see this pivot and this power grab that occurred with Friedman's position, and Sinek sort of shaped that perspective very nicely, as you pointed to, only to come out of 2020 and return to work and go back and have an understanding that the people that are in that space are the ones with the power, and the whole theory and positioning of quiet quitting, you know, the ability to secure and protect yourself personally and professionally within your the space that compensates you to provide you with the life that you're accustomed to, you know, and the strength, and now we're looking and we're seeing this grab back where we're trying to get this power leverage of those people that are doing the work and showing up and participating, and trying to get that power back and put it back at the foot of the leaders, and get it back to the power of the shareholders. It's kind of an interesting dynamic. And do you have any, I mean, by the mere fact that you brought it up, it's kind of interesting, and I'd like to hear your insights on how that
Yeah.
power shift is.
So so these are just the facts, and I think everybody has to embrace it.
Mm-hmm.
We're never going back to where things were like in the 80s, where there was loyalty, from the company, or even, now, when, like you said, quiet quitting, where there's loyalty, from the employees. That is completely gone. It will never
Mm,
happen again. Okay. And here's what it's going to be replaced with. So everything has been, democratized, and it's being democratized by AI,
mm-hmm.
whereas you take 99% of the population doesn't understand, or is using, or is not using AI to their advantage today. Okay.
Fair.
And that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you look like. Man, woman, black, white, whatever race, it doesn't matter. It's just 99% of the population. So everybody's at the same kind of starting point.
Mm,
Okay. Okay. As it relates to AI. And then right after that, you've got, quantum computing
mm-hmm.
coming out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so even less are even there. Okay. Now you take AI, you take quantum computing, you take robotics, bring
Mm-hmm.
all that together, and then you take blockchain. Blockchain completely democratizing, the
Mm-hmm.
way the financial system used to be run. So like that means that, as it comes to investment, you, Chandler, are getting the same opportunity that I'm getting. The whole mindset of, we think, finances and blockchain, what's happened historically. If I put my money in the bank and everyone's told to save,
Mm.
now people are realizing how ridiculous that is. But there is somebody on the other side that created the system. When you
Mm-hmm.
put your money in the bank and save, they're investing at least 9x off of your money while you're saving. Okay. So they built a system that works for them. But when you look at blockchain, that's not the construct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, so we're never going to go back to where, you go and work at a company and you trust that company to take care of you. The mindset today, and a few of the data points I'll just throw in,
Yeah,
you
please.
you take these companies, or actually take the employees of these companies or pseudo employees to work for, say, Uber or any of these, delivery services, or Amazon delivery, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I live in Los Angeles, and I'm looking at autonomous vehicles. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so in a few years, the delivery and Uber drivers, like if you were driving today, or if you're doing delivery today, by 2030, that job will be gone. Okay.
That's 5 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, because again, if I'm running a large company and I'm thinking, okay, I got paid for individuals, I got have insurance in case I get in an accident and all this stuff and healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
all these things, like, oh, I can just get an autonomous vehicle. I don't worry about all that. And it's gonna automatically, with a robot in it's automatically gonna drop it off at your doorstep. And then when it drops off your doorstep, it'll know it to place it in the corner by the door so it can't be seen from the street. They're not gonna throw it. None of these things are gonna happen. It's just better and smoother. But the actual individual that had those jobs, that's gonna go away. And so we, as a people, we got to get ready for what the world looks like in 2030. It's going to be very, very different. And I don't feel like anybody's looking at that. You know, there are a few people that are looking at it. The ones that are looking at, they're already there, but that's about 1% of the population. So
So,
yeah.
I mean, I like I don't disagree with you in even in the slightest, right? Um, I would argue that it will probably happen sooner than that. The bottleneck is going to be governance and the ability to get these things licensed and available to the general population when you're claiming that, only 1% really even understands it and less than 1% knows how to actually monetize and take it that step further for general populative use, right?
Mhm.
So I mean there's a whole conversation, but let's consider our audience here. So we touched on blockchain, understanding how we decentralize financial systems, right? And we've talked about automation and robotics and the ability for automation of or automation of systems that are repetitive and over and over and over. So, driving down the same street with the same lights and all of those systems are integrated so that there's no longer, insurance on vehicles. Is that even a thing of the future once you remove the misunderstandings of society and the inability for people to be paying attention what they're driving and causing accidents? I mean, it's an incredible conversation around futurism and what that looks like in the future, and I'm here for that. But as we sit here and we're talking with our audience that's listening, what does that mean to them, right? What does it mean for, how do they secure themselves? How do they, what steps do they take to move forward? And, you know, let's touch on cybersecurity and the ability for people to secure themselves, their finances, and their future tomorrow and 6 months and in 2030. What does that look like to you?
Yeah, one of my favorite topics. Like literally every talk I do is on AI and cybersecurity in the future. So let's break this down. So yeah, I literally was, on a sales call this morning. I was talking to a prospect, and
Mm,
and we were talking about they had a compromise already.
hmm
They're, small company, 10 employees at this point, but growing up in a very, very hot market.
Okay.
And so I was like, so what do you have in place now? I assume you have multi-factor authentication in place with everything.
hmm
Like, no,
Oh
no.
boy. Yeah.
And so, okay, I'll say this time and time again. Your passwords, my passwords, everybody's passwords are compromised.
hmm
Okay. Through all the breaches that have ever happened, your passwords have already, they're in a database on the dark web. They have your passwords. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then for the techie people, I'll give you an example, which is just blows my mind. That in say 2005, we used to have these really fast password cracking servers, and we would get the hashes out when we were doing penetration testing, and we
hmm hmm
take them and we put them into this password cracking service. If you had a weak one in your server, and then if you had a weak password, we could crack it within about an hour or so, whatever. But if you
hmm
had a strong complicated password, it's like it'll be weeks before we'll break this or whatever.
Sure.
Where was computing?
Strong, just
Yeah, go ahead.
strong password. What is a strong, what does that mean to you? Because what it means to those listening and what it means to you, I think are two very different things.
Yeah, all right, that's a great question. So in that example, if you had a strong password, in 2005, that meant it would take weeks for someone to crack your password.
hmm
What has happened to computing power in the last 20 years since 2005?
hmm
Okay. So
hmm
that hacking scenario of a strong password that took weeks, to break is seconds.
Yeah.
Okay, today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the fact that all the passwords have been compromised, they can easily be cracked, and everything is automated as far as hacking into your company, and then just go one step further. There are you heard of ChatGPT, but there's fraud GPT. There are
hmm
LLMs that
hmm
are designed to build out your whole hacking scenario. So I could say I want to go hack into, I don't know, ABC 123 company, right?
Yep.
And it will go and build the phishing campaigns. It will build a fake website. It will do everything. And I'm literally hacking is just hitting go
Hmm.
at this point. It is
Hmm.
not you actually doing any coding, anything that you used to have to do to hack in. It is automated. So my point is that if you got AI enabled hacking, and when you think about phishing emails, business email compromise, ransom, all of this was very, very successful prior to AI coming out in roughly
Hmm.
2022-ish. So now
Hmm.
you take what was already working very well and you add AI on top of it, it is hugely successful
Hmm.
for hackers, right? Just like taking candy from a baby. Now you go look at the other side, companies don't even have multi-factor authentication in place when passwords are done.
Hmm.
They are not applying patches on to patch their systems. In
Hmm.
2021, there were 20,000 vulnerabilities that came out in that year. In 2024, there were 40,000. So every single day, 109 new vulnerabilities come out every single day. And if you're not patching your system, your phone, your computer, whatever, then I'm a hacker and then I can just run a quick scan, press a button, and I'm on your computer. I've
Hmm.
exploited a vulnerability. It is that simple. And you
Hmm.
don't have multi-factor authentication. Your passwords are easily compromised. You don't have next generation AI-based antivirus on your computer. You're still using legacy signature, if anything at all.
Hmm.
Yes, you will be compromised. So the gap is getting significantly bigger.
It's a
Okay.
chasm. It's
Yeah,
a chasm. So
exactly.
just
Yeah.
so that we can quickly touch on all of the sort of jargon terms that you were throwing around there. So multi-factor authentication, that's being able to authenticate in two different locations, on your device, on your mobile phone, on your device, on another you know, qubit roller that gives you another bit of information to enter into the system so that it can verify that it's you.
Yeah.
Strong password, 16 characters or more, right? Capital, lowercase, not password 123 exclamation mark, right? We're looking to get expansive in what those
Amy,
passwords
just
look like.
to be
Yeah,
clear, just want to lay down this gauntlet.
please.
Passwords are dead.
They're gone.
Okay, and I
They're
don't
gone.
care if it's strong or not.
All
Passwords
right.
are dead. You have to use multi-factor two authentication type of authentication, and the SMS texting
Mm,
back to you for authentication
mhm,
that is dead as well. Okay,
mhm,
sometimes
mhm.
that's all people have and can understand, so you got to use that's better than
Please.
nothing.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but if you Google SMS, like Microsoft has discontinued using, you got to have the authenticator app. Like
Yep.
so that's dead. So I just want to
Mhm.
lay down where that is. In the last piece, in a few pieces, I want to make sure the audience understands
Please.
your personal information
Hmm.
is on the dark web.
Hmm.
Okay. Mine is on the dark web. I've done everything I could to protect it. But if I applied for a house
Yes.
and all that information was in some database and that company got compromised, they've taken all the information, it's all available. Social
Hmm.
security number, last few addresses and mother's maiden, all that is compromised. So if you look at the world today, hackers have all your personal information. They can crack your passwords.
Hmm.
You can an attack can be automatically simulated and created for you and your company using AI.
Hmm.
And a term I'll use now, define it really quickly: spear phishing. Everybody knows
Yes.
what phishing is. What spear phishing means is that Chandler, I am specifically targeting you. I saw
Hmm.
you post on LinkedIn or whatever, and you put, "Hey, I was at this conference last week," and then I send you a note, and I'm like, "Hey, Chandler, I saw you there. I didn't get a chance to come up and say hi. Let's schedule some time. Let's do some business together. Here's a link to my calendar." Do you click
Hmm.
that link? Yes, you click that link. And you click that link, and that link has embedded malware, and it automatically compromises your computer because you're not patching your system. I don't know if you are or not, but I'm just saying. But you don't patch or you're not updated, then you're done.
Hmm.
So you will get compromised unless you have these controls in place. And AI automation of these hacks has taken it to a whole nother level. So there's a very large gap.
All right. So we've done the doom and gloom. Our hero is now in the pit of despair. They're
Yeah.
walking through the shadow of doubt. Where's the light?
The light is education. We have to acknowledge where technology is today. I mean, to me, it's like a runaway train,
Mm,
and we're still at the stop, and the train is gone. And
hmm.
so when if I were a hacker today, I would be filled with joy.
It's a heyday.
It's a heyday.
It's a heyday.
Exactly. So the analogy I use is this. When you drive to the mall and you get out of your car, you close your door, you lock it, you roll up the windows. Okay. And but if you left your wallet in the front seat and your windows down and you came back to your car, you're like, someone stole my wallet. Everybody like, well, that's ridiculous. Of course they stole your wallet. Okay. So let's equate this to cybersecurity.
Yeah.
So if you're not using multi-factor,
Hmm.
you're not patching your systems, you don't
Hmm.
do any security awareness training, you don't have any antivirus, next generation antivirus, you're not preventative blocking attacks, and
Hmm.
then someone hacks into your company, should you be mad?
You left your window down with your wallet on the seat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's nuanced too. All those things I just said,
Yeah.
when people say, well, I had antivirus, okay,
Hmm.
that's just like saying, all right, I rolled up
I,
my window,
I
but I
rolled
did
up my
lock my
window.
door. And I did
Yeah,
lock my
that's
door.
right.
And
That's
if you're
right.
old enough to see the little thing that used to stick up to show where your door was locked or not, then
That's
somebody
right.
could walk by and say, oh, the door's not locked, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you got to do it all.
Yeah.
And if we do it all in our personal lives, for our homes and our cars, why can't we do it for our businesses and our personal, cybersecurity?
And I think it's awareness. I think education is, you nailed it for sure. I think that's number one, right? But how do we keep current? How do we stay up to date when you look at and I tried to quote this number to a friend of mine that I was having a conversation with because quantum computing, you said you were interested in it. It blew my mind at the speed at which its computational power is accelerating from
Mhm.
what we were able to do 6 months ago to what we can do today
Yeah.
is insane. Like in like billions of years of computation 6 months ago. 24 minutes now, something like that. Like it's insane. So the pace at which this is moving, how does anyone that isn't at the tippy point of this arrowhead, and I mean there isn't much room at the tippy point, how
Right.
do we stay current and prevent this heyday from happening outside of education? What are the resources that we look to? What are the positions of truth that we can listen to in the days of fake news and AI generated stories and hacks and we've all seen them.
Hmm.
So how do we know that we're getting legitimate information and we're following getting good advice and we're following, best practice is a low bar today. Like you said, right? It's rolling up your window and locking your doors. You need to do better. You need to have the GPS system and the Apple tag and the everything else that you need to be able to track, watch, and monitor. So what
Yeah.
does that look like? Where do we go for these answers?
I hate to be doom and gloom
Yeah,
because I do have a solution, but I want to lay a foundation here.
please.
Here's the challenge. If I'm a company in a small business or mid-market business, whatever,
Hmm.
I had to do the analysis because I had to be able to answer your question. And
Right.
I even did a video on it about a year ago. I said, what makes the company spend money on cybersecurity? I'm curious,
Hmm.
Chandler, do you know what makes them spend money on it?
Typically, it's done in blood. It's done because they got hacked.
Yes. So there are four drivers, not necessarily in this order, depends
Mm,
on where you are, that drives companies, to do it. And we'll start with the blood. Okay, they got hacked. They're like, oh crap, we gotta do cybersecurity. Make sure that doesn't happen again. But they're not gonna proactively do it before that.
right, of
They
course.
know they don't have multi-factor, they know they're not applying patches, they know again, they're not locking the door and rolling up the windows. They know that.
We live in a safe space. It's a safe environment. No one's
Exactly.
ever hit us. We don't need it.
Exactly. Nothing's happened before, so we're not
That's
gonna
right.
say
That's
exactly.
right.
That's number one. Number two, compliance.
Hmm.
So if I'm a business and I've got to get this big deal with this large, global organization, it's going to be huge for us, then like I say, you got to be compliant with whatever.
Hmm.
You can go and do it.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
Now, compliance does not equal cybersecurity, just to be clear. So
Hmm.
because it could say you need to have antivirus in every single system. If you Google and you like free antivirus, you can find free antivirus, and you can put it on every
Great.
system or
I
pay.
got McCaffrey on all of my devices. We're
Exactly.
good.
Yeah. You check the box. Okay.
Yeah.
Antivirus done. But that doesn't mean you're secure. Okay. You will easily be compromised. So then number three actually is cyber insurance.
Hmm.
So you want to get that big deal, and they're coming to you and they're saying, "Hey, you got to add us to your insurance policy. So if you get access to our data within our company and you get compromised, we want to know that we can get at least a million, 2 million, $5 million out of you. So add us to the policy so we're covered in case you get hacked."
Yep.
Okay, that's
Hmm.
another. But you can't get insurance today unless you meet certain requirements. Just like saying, I bought a new car. It doesn't have anti-lock brakes, doesn't have the third brake light, doesn't have seat belts, doesn't have airbags, but
Hmm.
I want insurance.
Hmm.
Insurance company not gonna get you insurance on that car. And so you gotta have multi-factor, endpoint protection, patching applied, security awareness training, etc. Then you qualify for insurance. So
Hmm.
that makes you do cybersecurity. And the
Hmm.
last one is called third-party risk management. So what's interesting is, to your point, a lot of companies, big companies, have said, all right, this compliance is just box checking. We're going to build our own questionnaire and we're going to
Hmm.
send it to you. You got to answer all these questions and attest that you're doing all these things.
Hmm.
And then that gives them assurance that you're doing it. And so not a compliance, but a questionnaire from a large global organization. So those are
Hmm.
the four drivers to make companies have to get cybersecurity.
Hmm. Hmm.
So just to finish it off, what we do at Cyvatar,
There
we
we
do
go.
we do all that for you. You simply outsource cybersecurity and IT in affordable subscriptions based upon number of employees. Because the other challenge is most companies, like, I don't know if I can afford cybersecurity. Well,
It's
you
expensive.
you can, and you can
Hmm.
afford enterprise grade cybersecurity with Cyvatar. That's what we have brought to the table and been in business for 5 years. Hundreds of companies have been secured. We have a freemium subscription that has 1,100 companies that get the assessments and gap analysis. All that's for free. I'm not going to
Hmm.
charge you to tell you something's wrong. That's like
Hmm.
us charging you and saying, "Hey, Chandler, your window's down, your door's unlocked." And you're
Hmm.
like, "Yeah, I can see that. Thank you." We're not going to charge you for that. But to keep your doors closed and locked all the time, yes, that is a subscription to meet compliance and insurance, requirements. Yes, we take care of that for you.
Hmm. Yeah, you got to hang out in the back seat, right?
Yep.
Riding in the babe seat in
Yeah.
the middle.
Yeah.
Keep an eye. Hey, hey, hey.
We're riding shotgun. We're riding
Hide
shotgun
hide
with
your wallet in the glove box. Roll up your window. Lock. No. Hit the button. Yep. No. Hit the button. Good. Okay.
you. No,
Now
better
we're
yet,
good.
we're doing it for you. We're not even asking you to do it.
Even better.
We're doing
Even
it.
better. Yeah. No, I hear that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, where I think we'll sound like a bunch of crazy people if we talk about what we see as the future, right? So maybe we just put a pin in that for another conversation because I think that could be really interesting. How would you describe yourself in 3 words? What does that look like to you?
Um, I am obsessed with the future.
Hmm.
So definitely a futurist. Um, I hate using the word visionary, but I like to see where things are going and design pathways to get there.
Hmm.
The past is done. That's just wisdom. You learn
Mm.
from that. The future is to be created, and I'm obsessed with creating the future and staying ahead of it. So yeah, I don't know if that's 3 words, but definitely,
I'll take it. I'll
yeah.
take it. Yeah, no, it's good. And I see that. I see that for sure. Do you have are you a quote guy? Do you have a guiding quote that sort of speaks to you and steers you?
Oh my God, I absolutely am a quote guy. I could probably give you 10, but I'll give you one that was just looking at, and I say it all the time. It ties into what I just said. Uh,
Awesome.
the best way to predict the future is to create it. And that's Peter
Mm,
Drucker. And so as an entrepreneur or even as a person, we should all be creating our futures. And that ties closely to quantum physics, the fact that everything exists in possibility.
mhm.
And whatever we think or say, we're creating that future. Whether you're conscious of it or not, you're creating it. So you might as well create something that you actually want for your
Yeah,
future.
There it is. There it is. I couldn't agree more. I mean, and it's funny because I feel like human as a species, as a society, we've known it for so long, right?
Mhm.
You speak it out into the ethos, and all of a sudden, we framed it as manifestation
Yeah.
for a period of time, right? And I mean, I think there's so much power, and there's power that we don't even understand within ourselves, that we haven't figured out how we manipulate our environment in ways that we
Mhm.
don't even understand. Now, you mentioned that you were into biohacking, so you must have a morning routine.
Yes, there's more I could do in my morning routine. I am not a morning person. I have kind of a night slash morning routine. Every single
Perfect.
I,
Run us through it.
I sleep with noise canceling headphones on,
Mhm.
and I'm listening to sleep meditations as I sleep every single night. Because who wants to waste the time of sleeping? Like your subconscious is not sleep;
Right.
it's dreaming and doing all kind of random stuff. So you might as well be reprogramming that subconscious while you're sleeping. So use that time to reprogram, but also if there's a problem that you have to solve, put that into your mind and think about it before you go to bed and let your subconscious figure it out. So when you wake up in the morning, you actually have a solution. So
Of
I'm
that
working
solution.
that. Yeah.
I love that. Have you done any sort of sleep studying in as much as, the stages of sleep that you're going through, and how that affects like the auditory input versus the restorative process of sleep? Have you looked at that at all?
I'm analyzing my stats every single night. I have a Whoop that is on, and I'm always
Hmm.
looking at that. And I sleep on a bed with eight sleep,
Ah, I
and
love it. I love it.
it
Yeah,
gives me
that's great.
stats. So I got multiple stats coming in on my
Of course you
status.
do. Of course you do. That's fantastic. I definitely want to hear your insights on some of that, because it's something that I'm deeply interested in. What what would you say is the thing that you're most afraid of? I mean, we've talked about some pretty ominous things in this short conversation that we had, but and be as vulnerable or as guarded as you wish, but I'm curious, what fears do you have, and why?
Yeah, so it is interesting. I've been through enough in my
Hmm.
life. There's not a lot I'm afraid of. Yeah,
Okay.
there isn't, there's don't get me wrong, I do have fear
Hmm.
and again, being vulnerable in the last 5 years probably of cried more than but I'm big into you gotta get it out. You can't
Yes.
hold it in. I think that's
Yeah.
really bad for you.
Hmm.
You get it out, then you're like, all right, shake it off, and you jump back in. Like I'm back into it, okay? But you gotta go through it. You gotta
Yes.
feel the emotion and that's important. I will say one fear I do have. I'm not a big fan of heights. Like I'm not a height guy. I mean, I will do it. It's just I think it's the falling part that's scary, but heights just kind of freak me
There
out.
it is right there. Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, can you fly?
I
You're
can fly.
okay
I
as
can
long as
fly.
you have no fear of falling. So you
Yeah,
can take a flight, but it's being on the edge of something that
exactly. You're not gonna
gotcha.
catch me on the edge of anything.
Nothing. Got it. All right. Are you a superhero guy, Marvel, DC? Do you have someone that you admire, that you would identify as your superhero?
Um, I mean, I've seen those movies and all that. I'm not necessarily a superhero guy. I think that all of us are
Mm,
individually superheroes.
I like it.
We are our own heroes.
Hmm.
Is everybody on this earth, we're all human. I mean, it's looking up to something or someone is challenging. I think we're our own hero,
Hmm.
and we have to be that. And in many cases, I'm a big save yourself kind of guy.
I love that. Yeah, and that fits.
Yeah.
Listen, it has been an absolute pleasure, Corey. Thank you so much for your time, your insights, your perspective. Any closing thoughts that you want to share, that you want to point to? Anything coming down the pipe at you that you're excited about?
Yeah, I mean, just a few things. I do want to just, reiterate what I just said. I want everybody out there, be your own hero,
Hmm.
okay?
Hmm.
It have a mindset of saving yourself and saving others. Bring others with you.
Hmm.
The old, crabs in a barrel kind of mentality, pulling other people down, it just doesn't work. let's pull people up out of the barrel and be your own hero. And lastly, just you can go to our website, cyvatar.ai, cyvatar.ai. Sign up for your free external scans and policies and MasterCard risk recon, risk ratings, all that stuff will help give you a baseline as to where you are. And then when you're ready for a consultation, then reach out to us and we'll get you what you need to right size your cybersecurity for your organization. So we'll leave with that.
I like that. Right size your cybersecurity. That's good. Well, again, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your generosity and your time. And I look forward to having another conversation with you again soon.
Okay. Thank you.